When I was 18, I never imagined that one night would scar my soul forever. Now at 22, living in San Antonio, Texas, that memory still lingers like a shadow that won't let go. It was my senior year of high school. The pandemic had cast an eerie stillness over the city. With lockdowns in place and quarantine rules, the streets were abandoned, amplifying the silence. My friends and I, however, found ourselves drawn to the desolation. Urban exploration became our thrill, our escape from the confinement. Exploring abandoned, haunted places was my way of feeling alive. Danger had never truly frightened me. I'd encountered everything from vagrants to cults, and even the occasional weapon. But nothing had prepared me for the horror that awaited that night. One evening I convinced Clarissa, a girl I'd recently started dating, to join me. We decided to visit O.P. Schnabel Park at the dead of night, 3 a.m. to be precise. The park is beautiful and serene by day, but by night, it's a place of shadows, of silence that feels alive. The air grows thick there, and the memories of unspeakable tragedies seep into the ground. Back in 2016, a young woman named Lauren Bump had been brutally murdered there, and just recently, a boy was shot while exploring those same woods. But still, the thrill of the unknown called to us. We arrived, stepping into the darkness. The trees blotted out any trace of moonlight, leaving us in almost complete darkness. I preferred it that way. The less visible, the safer I felt from prying eyes or curious onlookers. For a while, the quiet was comforting. But as we ventured deeper, an unsettling stillness took over. It was as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting. About 20 minutes in, I led us down an off-road trail that would loop back to the truck. Only a couple of minutes into the trail, an otherworldly sound shattered the silence. A flute, soft and melodic, drifted through the air, filling the woods with a chilling melody. The notes were strange, almost hypnotic, and yet wrong, as if something was mimicking music without truly understanding it. Clarissa gripped my arm, her face pale as she trembled. She began whispering prayers, her voice barely above a whisper, pleading for salvation. The flute's tune grew louder, impossibly close, echoing from all around us. Its haunting notes seemed to seep through the trees, surrounding us with an eerie cadence. The sound floated through the air as if it were alive, breathing down our necks. I tried to locate where it was coming from, but the melody twisted and turned, always just out of reach. Then, without warning, there was a rush, a sound like leaves scattering and branches snapping. Something large dashed across the path just feet in front of us, but there was no silhouette, no shadow, only the unsettling feeling that something massive and malevolent had passed us by. The air felt heavy, thick with the weight of something unseen. My heart raced, pounding in my ears as Clarissa's breath quickened beside me. We turned, bolting back toward the main trail, desperately trying to escape the haunting music that chased us through the darkness. But just as we reached the spot where we first heard the flute, it started again, louder and closer, as if it were taunting us. This time the tune had a sinister, almost mocking quality, as though some dark spirit was reveling in our fear. Our only choice was to run, the adrenaline making the impossible darkness feel alive, with eyes and unseen horrors watching our every step. In our frenzied escape, we stumbled past a lone porta potty, a solitary shadow standing eerily by the trail. I dared not look at it too long, fearing what might be lurking within. The truck was within sight, and with every ounce of strength left in me, I raced toward it, dragging Clarissa along. Finally, we reached the truck, and without a second thought, I floored the gas, tearing away from that cursed place. The eerie flute song haunted my mind even as we sped away, growing faint in the distance yet lingering in the back of my mind. The next day, I scoured the internet, searching for any similar stories. The woods had seen horrors, ghosts, cults, creatures of the night, but no one, it seemed, had ever encountered a flute's haunting melody at the dead of night, drawing people into its sinister trap. The more I pondered, the more I began to wonder if the sound had even been real or some dark force intent on tormenting us. To this day, I've never gone back to Opie Schnabel Park after dark. The memory of that eerie, chilling flute and the terror that washed over me remains seared into my mind. The woods hold secrets, and some of them should remain forever untouched. I'm 20 years old, working as a pharmacy technician in a medium-sized hospital in northwest Alabama. I work the early night shift from 6 p.m. until 4 a.m., in charge of stocking the surgery rooms with medications. My schedule runs in brutal blocks, 7 days on, 7 days off. Each week starts on a Thursday, and by the 6th night, that Tuesday, the hours have worn me thin, leaving me a hollow-eyed shadow, a little more weary, a little less myself. That Tuesday, the final stretch, my wife had been staying over at her aunt's house, babysitting her young cousins while the aunt and uncle were away. The house lacked curtains, and she'd grown nervous from every creak and whisper in the empty space around her. I agreed to come stay with her on her last night there. The moment I arrived, she was visibly relieved, like my presence was a ward against something unseen. She thanked me quietly, and I could tell she'd been tense for days, maybe without even knowing why. Working nights for years has drained me in more ways than one. Sleep doesn't come easy anymore. Even as I lay beside her, exhaustion pulling me under, something kept me awake, an itch in my mind that wouldn't let me go. I was running on fumes, a Red Bull here, an energy drink there. Somehow, I kept my eyes open as the night gave way to dawn, filled with a long list of errands and obligations. By the time my wife drove me to the hospital for my shift, I hadn't slept in over 24 hours, my head buzzing, an edge of unreality twisting around everything I saw. That night, I slipped into routine, hoping the movement would stave off the fatigue clawing at my mind. I was in the surgery wing, stocking meds as usual, music pulsing through my earbuds, insulating me in a thin cocoon of normalcy. I felt the slow burn of exhaustion creeping up on me, but I pushed through it. Then from behind me the door squealed open, a high-pitched whine that cut through my music, followed by the heavy slam of wood. I turned, expecting to see one of the surgery personnel or housekeeping making their rounds. But there was no one there, just empty, silent space. I brushed it off, thinking maybe someone had come in, seen me, and left without a word. But the unease lingered. As I pushed my cart into the next room, I saw the faint outline of a figure hunched over by the disposal bin, their hands rooting through the contents like an animal searching for something vital, almost desperate. I blinked, the cold of recognition creeping over me. Someone had been caught doing just that weeks ago, searching for drugs, but they were fired, gone. "Hey, what are you doing?" I demanded, flipping on the light. The figure vanished, the space vacant, only the soft hum of the machines around me. My pulse hammered. I shook it off again, deciding it was the lack of sleep, hallucinations creeping in around the edges. Still, an unsettling chill ran through me, the feeling that maybe, just maybe, something else was moving through those halls tonight. Around 2 a.m., I began my rounds, delivering medications to each floor. Each wing of the hospital mirrored the others in a strict, silent symmetry. The 5th floor was empty that night, half of it closed off for remodeling, the rooms lying in dark, abandoned rows. When I reached it, I felt an inexplicable urge to see the empty 5,455 wing. Curiosity, or maybe something darker, tugged me forward, my steps echoing down the vacant hall. The hallway yawned before me, stretching in unnatural silence. Suddenly, a sound broke through the stillness. A rattling, coming from a room up ahead. Room 5512. I approached slowly, dread gnawing at me, and as I peered inside, I froze. An old man lay sprawled across the bed, his body convulsing violently, blood trickling from his eyes, his nose, and the corners of his gaping mouth. His skin was pallid, almost translucent under the dim light. The bed shook as he thrashed, making a horrific gurgling noise that clawed at my mind. The monitors beside him were a frenzy of beeps, alarms blaring like they were screaming for help. I stumbled back, gripping the doorframe. I was terrified. It was clear this man needed help, that he was in his death throes. I took a step forward, ready to help, when the reality of what I was seeing crashed over me like ice. The room was pristine, untouched. The bed neatly made, the monitor silent. The man was gone. Panic flooded through me. My hands were shaking as I stumbled back down the hallway. I made it to the elevator, my breath coming in shallow gasps, and punched the button. The doors slid open, and a familiar face appeared before me. An old man in a security shirt, a hospital badge gleaming on his chest. It was the same man I'd just seen thrashing in agony. He smiled, a ghastly, unsettling grin, and reached out, patting my shoulder as he passed. I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe as he walked past and vanished into the darkness beyond. The elevator doors closed, and I could hear it ascending to the 5th floor. When it came back down, the doors opened to reveal an empty compartment. When my wife came to pick me up, I bolted to the car, refusing to look back at the building. But as we drove away, I felt the inevitable pull to glance at the 5th floor windows. There he stood, silhouetted against the pale glow from within, watching, waiting. 2 weeks have passed since that night, yet his face haunts me in every reflection, in every shadow. I haven't seen him since, but the dread lingers. I still don't know if it was the sleep deprivation that night or something else. All I know is, I felt something dark, something beyond explanation, there in that hospital, and it felt all too real. Living with my boyfriend Ma in his modest just 8 houses, a silence broken only by the whisper of trees in a small wooded area down the block. brushing it off as a prank or a mistimed ding-dong ditch. My friends and I nervously laughed. "Hey," a man's voice whispered. "Anyone home? I could use some help out here." After a cursory glance around the house, they left, dismissing my worry with a casual me cold. The basement door was wide open. My heart stilled as a faint rhythmic clicking echoed. his time.